It started at a boarding school tucked deep in the suburbs. A quiet, brick-built campus surrounded by trees that looked calm by day and almost alive by night. Alex says he'd just started 8th grade when the school assigned him a roommate named Weston. They weren't close, just two random kids thrown together, trying to survive a new environment. The room was plain: 2 metal frame beds, 2 desks, 1 closet, and a window that faced the woods. At first, Weston seemed quiet but normal. One afternoon, out of nowhere, Weston walked up to Alex and handed him a folded piece of paper. No expression, no explanation. Alex opened it and realized it was a list of items he wasn't allowed to bring into the room. That alone was weird enough, but what was written on the paper was disturbing in a way Alex couldn't explain. Things like no frogs, no sharp glass, no salt. Alex thought it was a joke. He even laughed a little, but Weston didn't smile. He just stood there, staring, as if expecting Alex to take it seriously. Alex tried asking what it was about, but Weston just said, "Don't break the list," and went back to his desk like nothing had happened. As days passed, then weeks, Weston became even stranger. He had this habit of muttering under his breath at night. Not random mumbling, it sounded like full conversations. Soft, rhythmic whispers that carried through the dark after lights out. Sometimes Alex could make out a few words, but never enough to understand what he was saying. Once Alex heard him say, "Don't let him in." Another time, he knows now. It was creepy. At first, Alex thought maybe Weston was just talking in his sleep. But the way his voice sounded, deliberate, intentional, made it hard to believe. Silence. Then there was the notebook. Weston guarded it like it was made of gold. He kept it hidden under his mattress and carried it everywhere whenever he left the room. One day, curiosity got the better of Alex. He waited until Weston went to class, then lifted the mattress. What he found was a small, beat-up black notebook filled with only a few pages of writing. But every page had lists of names. Dozens of them, some scratched out, some not. Alex flipped through it, trying to find any pattern. They weren't random. They were names of students at the school, and then he saw his own name near the bottom. Not crossed out. Alex froze. His heart pounded in his ears. It didn't make any sense. What was this list? Why were some names scratched out? He quickly put the notebook back, trying to leave everything exactly as he found it. But from that day on, something changed. Weston started watching him, not talking, just watching at lunch. In the hallway, at night, Alex could feel his eyes on him constantly. He started avoiding the dorm altogether, sleeping on friends' floors, making excuses to study late. But eventually, he had to go back, and that's when it happened. One night around 2 a.m., Alex woke up. At first, he thought he'd been hearing Weston whispering again. But as his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he realized Weston wasn't in his bed. He was standing right beside Alex's bed, just standing there, completely still, smiling. Alex screamed. Weston didn't move, didn't flinch. He just stared down at Alex, that same smile frozen on his face. His hands were slightly raised, like he'd been reaching for something, and then stopped. When Alex finally shouted, "What the hell are you doing?" Weston simply said, "You were talking in your sleep." Then, as if that explained everything, he turned around and calmly walked back to his bed. Alex didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. In the morning, Weston acted like nothing had happened. He even smiled when Alex brought it up, insisting Alex must have dreamed it. The more normal Weston acted, the less normal everything felt. A week later, Alex came back to the room to find something alive writhing on his bed. A small garden snake, cold, wet, and hissing softly against his sheets. Alex jumped back, shouting. Weston, sitting at his desk, barely looked up. Then, with a weird half-smile, he said, "Sorry, just a prank." Alex demanded to know where he got it. Weston just frowned and said, "What do you mean? They're everywhere." Before Alex could respond, Weston opened a small glass jar on his desk, and the snake slithered straight into it. Like it knew exactly where to go, Alex couldn't stop shaking. He didn't report it. He didn't dare. He was terrified of what Weston might do if he got in trouble. He was 13, alone. And something about that room, about Weston, felt infected. Then came the night Alex calls the breaking point. He woke up, paralyzed. Couldn't move, couldn't scream. Only his eyes worked. On the ceiling above him, something black was swirling, like a thick moving cloud. It twisted and pulsed like it was breathing. Then from that blackness, something reached out, a claw, long, thin, and scraping against the bed frame. Bone dragged itself closer until it hovered right over him, and then it stopped. As if something had scared it, the thing recoiled, screeching in a low guttural sound Alex had never heard before. It thrashed violently, knocking papers and books off their desks, and then it darted across the room and crashed through the window. Glass shattered. Alex's eyes shot open. He was awake, except the window really was broken. Glass lay scattered across the floor. His bed frame had deep, fresh claw marks carved into it. He couldn't breathe. He looked at Weston, who was sound asleep, snoring softly. Alex ran to his bed, shaking him, screaming his name. Weston didn't wake. The fear twisted into something else. Confusion, disbelief, dread. He wanted Weston to wake up, to scream at him, to admit it was all a prank, but he didn't. By the time the RA came to check the noise, Alex could barely talk. They separated them that night, moved Alex to another room. When he came back the next morning, Weston's side of the room was empty. His bed gone, his desk cleared, even the jar with the snake missing. When Alex asked the staff where Weston went, they told him, "He's no longer your concern." He never saw Weston again. Alex says he's told this story maybe twice in his life. The part that still haunts him isn't the list, or even the night of the broken window. It's the realization that he might have seen something he wasn't supposed to, because the window, the one that shattered, had broken outward, as if something inside the room had been trying to escape. This next story was sent in by a viewer named Melissa. She says this happened when she was 17, during the winter of 2012. And even though she tries to laugh it off now, she admits she still doesn't drive alone after dark. Melissa grew up in a small town in Idaho, the kind of place where there's one gas station, one diner, and nothing but farmland for miles. Her parents owned a small farmhouse about half a mile off the main road, quiet, isolated, with no close neighbors. It was mid-December. Snowstorms had rolled in hard that week, covering everything in thick white silence. Her parents had gone out of town for the weekend, leaving Melissa home alone with the family dog, a German shepherd named Duke. She wasn't scared. She'd stayed home alone plenty of times before. But something about that weekend felt heavy. The first night she noticed Duke acting strange. Normally he slept by the fireplace, quiet and calm. But around 11:30 he started growling, low, continuous, like he was warning something she couldn't see. Melissa turned off the TV, listening. Nothing. Just the soft hum of the heater and the wind outside. She told him to relax, but Duke wouldn't stop staring at the window. His ears were up, his body tense. She finally got up to look. The window faced the front yard, a long stretch of snow leading down to the gate by the main road. Under the moonlight, she could see tire marks, fresh ones, leading up toward the house. Except she hadn't heard a car. Her stomach dropped. She looked closer. The tire tracks stopped halfway up the driveway. There were footprints too, one set, leading from the end of the tracks straight toward the front porch. And they didn't go back. Silence. Melissa's first thought was maybe a delivery driver had gotten stuck in the snow and walked up for help. But no one had knocked, no one had called out, and the footprints stopped at the front steps, right under the window where Duke was staring. She turned off the lights, her pulse pounding. For the next hour she sat there, waiting, listening. Nothing. Eventually she convinced herself it was just some lost driver who'd turned around. She locked the door, left a lamp on, and went to bed. But sleep didn't last. Around 3 a.m., Duke started barking, full volume, vicious barks that shook the room. Melissa shot upright. The barking was coming from downstairs. She could hear him pacing, growling at the front door. Then she heard it too. Knocking. 3 slow, heavy knocks. Pause. She froze. Every hair on her arm stood up. She grabbed her phone and looked at the security app, but the Wi-Fi was out. The cameras were dead. The knocking came again, louder. Duke went insane, throwing himself at the door. Melissa dialed her mom. No answer. Her dad, no answer. The storm must have been cutting off the signal. She didn't dare go downstairs. Instead, she crawled to her bedroom window and looked out. Her heart nearly stopped. There was a man standing on the porch. He wasn't wearing a coat, just a dark hoodie and jeans, soaked from the snow. He was facing the door, completely still. No movement, no shivering, just waiting. She couldn't see his face. The porch light had burned out weeks ago. Melissa whispered, "Go away," under her breath, as if he could hear her. She considered calling the sheriff, but the nearest station was 30 minutes away. After what felt like an hour, though it was probably only minutes, the man stepped back. Slowly, his boots crunched in the snow. Then he walked off toward the tree line beside the house and disappeared. She stayed awake the rest of the night, clutching Duke until sunrise. By morning, everything looked calm again. Fresh snow had covered most of the tracks, but she could still see faint impressions of boots near the porch. She told herself it had to be some drunk or a hunter who'd lost his way. That night, she double-checked every lock, made sure Duke had food and water, and left every light on. But around midnight, she heard something that made her blood run cold. From the back of the house, not the front door this time, came a faint tapping. Not knocking, tapping, like fingernails against glass. Pause. It was coming from the kitchen window. She grabbed the nearest thing she could find, a flashlight, and crept downstairs, whispering Duke's name. But Duke was already there, growling, his teeth bared, staring at the window. Melissa turned on the flashlight. No one was there. But in the frost on the outside of the glass were handprints, not palm prints, just fingertips, dozens of them, smudged in slow, circular patterns, like someone had been dragging their fingers across the glass, watching. She screamed and called the sheriff. By the time they arrived, whoever it was had vanished. The only thing they found were the same footprints leading from the trees to the back window and stopping there. No return trail. Melissa begged to stay at a friend's house, and the officers agreed it was safer. But when she came back the next day to grab clothes, she noticed something new. Her parents' old answering machine was blinking. One new message. The timestamp was 2:47 a.m. The same time she'd heard the tapping. She pressed play. There was static at first. Then faint breathing. A man's voice, slow and low. "Why'd you leave the door unlocked?" She dropped the phone, screaming. The sheriff traced the number later that day. It came from a prepaid burner phone. The last signal pinged from somewhere in the woods behind their property. They never found him. Melissa says she and her parents moved out the next month. They sold the farmhouse cheap to a family from out of state. And last year, almost 10 years later, she got a Facebook message from the woman who bought it. It said, "Hey, this might sound strange, but do you know anything about a man who comes to the window at night?" This last story was sent in by a viewer named Derek. He says this happened in the fall of 2019, and even though nothing technically happened to him, what he saw still keeps him awake at night. But Derek worked nights at a small 24-hour gas station off a rural highway in northern Nevada. It was one of those places surrounded by nothing, no houses, no other buildings, just sand, tumbleweed, and silence. He worked the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift alone. He said most nights were slow. A few truckers, the occasional traveler passing through, that was it. The quiet didn't bother him until one night in late October. The night started normally. A couple of cars came and went before midnight. Then everything went still. No wind, no movement, just the hum of the old fluorescent lights above the pumps. At around 2:30 a.m., Derek noticed something strange on the security screen. One of the pumps, number 3, had just gone active. The sensor lit up as if someone had lifted the nozzle, but there was no car. He leaned forward, squinting at the grainy black and white camera feed. Pump 3 stood completely empty. No headlights, no movement. Just the nozzle swaying slightly, as if it had just been picked up. At first he thought maybe it was a glitch. That pump had been having issues all week. He reset the system, waited, but the light stayed on. Then the handle clicked. Someone had started fueling. Pause. Derek froze. He could clearly hear the distinct clunk of the pump engaging, echoing faintly through the still air outside. He looked again at the monitor. Still no one there. The nozzle was hanging in mid-air, connected to nothing. He got up, walked to the window and looked out. The station lot was empty. The pump stood under the buzzing lights, casting long, lonely shadows. But then he noticed something behind Pump 3. Movement. A dark figure half visible beyond the glare. It looked like a man, tall, thin, wearing a dirty brown coat. He was facing away from the station, staring out toward the desert. Derek grabbed the mic and called out through the speaker system, "Hey, we're closed for maintenance on that pump. You'll have to use a different one." The man didn't move. He just stood there, completely still, the nozzle hanging in his hand. Derek repeated himself. "Sir, you can't use that one." Nothing. He turned to grab his flashlight, and when he looked back, the man was gone. Silence. He stepped closer to the glass, scanning the lot. No one. But the pump was still running. Derek could hear it clicking faintly. He picked up the phone to call the sheriff's line, but the line was dead. The landline always worked, even when cell service didn't, but now, nothing, just static. He felt a knot tighten in his chest. He wasn't the kind of guy who scared easily, but something about this felt off. He locked the door, grabbed his flashlight, and went out to check the pump himself. The air outside was cold, unnaturally still. His boots crunched against the gravel as he approached. When he reached Pump 3, he saw the nozzle swinging gently, but the handle was still pressed. Gasoline was leaking out, puddling at the base of the pump. He shut it off immediately, coughing at the strong fumes. That's when he noticed the footprints, faint wet prints in the dust, bare feet, leading away from the pump toward the side of the building. He followed them slowly, his flashlight beam shaking against the wall. They led around to the storage shed and stopped. The door was cracked open slightly. He called out, "Sir, this is private property." No answer. He pushed the door open. The beam of his flashlight caught movement, something shifting in the dark corner. He took a cautious step forward. "Sir?" Then he saw it. It wasn't a person. It was a coat. A long, brown coat hanging from a nail on the wall, gently swaying as if someone had just brushed past it. The footprints ended right beneath it. Derek stepped back, pulse racing. He slammed the shed door shut, locked it, and ran back inside the station. Once inside, he checked the monitor again. Pump 3, off. Everything looked normal. The lot empty as ever. He tried the phone again. This time it worked. He called the local sheriff, explained what happened. They told him they'd send someone to check it out. 30 minutes later, a deputy pulled up. Derek went out to meet him, explaining everything. The deputy nodded slowly, flashlight scanning the ground. Then his beam stopped, right where the footprints had been. Only now, there were more. Dozens of them, leading from behind the station, toward the desert. The deputy followed them a few steps, then stopped. "They just end here," he said. He turned back, uneasy. "You said you saw him holding the pump?" "Yeah," Derek said. "Tall guy, brown coat, looked human, but something was wrong with him. He wasn't moving right." The deputy stared at him for a long moment, then said quietly, "We got a report last year about a man who froze to death out here. Hitchhiker. They found him half a mile down that way." He pointed toward the open desert. He was wearing a brown coat. Derek felt the air leave his lungs. "When was that?" "October 31st. The deputy smiled faintly. "Exactly a year ago tonight." The officer left soon after, promising to file a report. Derek tried to finish his shift, but couldn't shake the feeling he wasn't alone. Every few minutes he'd glance at the cameras, expecting to see movement. Around 4 a.m., something flickered on the feed. Pump 3, active again. This time, the monitor showed a car. A small dark sedan parked by the pump, but no one inside. Derek ran to the window. The lot was empty. He looked back at the screen. The car was still there. License plate visible. He wrote it down quickly just in case. Then, the screen glitched, fuzzed out, and went black. When the morning shift arrived, Derek told the manager everything. Showed him the security feed. But when they played it back, the car wasn't there. Neither was the man. The footage from 2 to 4 a.m. had been completely erased. The only thing left was one single still frame, a freeze of Pump 3, with something faint in the background. A human-shaped blur just visible under the station light. The manager shrugged it off, saying it was probably just a glitch. But Derek knew what he saw. He quit the job 2 weeks later. The sheriff called him a month after that. They'd run the license plate Derek wrote down, the one from the car on the feed. It belonged to the same man who'd died the year before. The one in the brown coat. Derek says he still drives past that station sometimes on his way home. It's been abandoned for years now. The lights still work though. They flicker on every night like someone forgot to turn them off. And once, just once, he swears he saw Pump 3 light up. The nozzle lifted, and a man in a brown coat standing beneath it,